Welcome back to the Christian Outpost Podcast. My name's Dustin.
And I'm here today. My name's Clifton.
Yep, we're here today. This is a very special episode. Clifton's never been on before. And
thanks for having me.
Hey, anytime. You're welcome here
Sure.
anytime. The audience doesn't know what we're talking about today, so let's go ahead and talk about the topic. The topic for today is a conversation between a Christian and a non-Christian, or someone who is skeptic. A skeptic.
I think the fair way of putting it is a skeptic of I don't believe fully in what the Bible says word for word, but I believe that they're a higher power. So
okay, cool. Yep. So more of a deist, which is you believe in a deity or something of a higher power.
Absolutely, I believe they have to be.
Whether that be God or aliens, or are you an Alex Jones?
We're not going to go there today, but I feel like that I've seen too many things, too many miracles, and too many coincidences to say that something's not there. I just don't believe everything in the Bible was 100% accurate.
Okay,
represented. So,
okay. Yeah. That's and you're entitled to your opinion.
Absolutely.
And that's fair. And I think we're going to have a conversation about that. So, well, let's just kick it off. What about the Bible do you not believe? Because I've, knowing you personally, which the audience doesn't know this, I've known you since the 7th grade.
Yeah, we've known each other for a long time.
A long, long time.
Extremely long time.
We've been through a lot.
Yes.
Ups and downs.
Absolutely.
And we've stayed pretty much friends the entire time.
Absolutely. And this podcast is not going to change anything.
No, it doesn't. And that's another thing I want to address too, is that this is a friendly conversation.
Absolutely.
And we'll leave it all on the table.
Sure.
We came here as friends. We'll leave as friends.
Absolutely.
And hopefully we'll leave the table with a better understanding of what each of us believes and why we believe it.
Yes.
Okay. So to kick it off, what part of the Bible are you a skeptic of? Like,
mainly Old Testament.
Old Testament?
Yeah, and the reason why the Old Testament is the Bible has a lot of miracles, and I think the miracle parts of it, I believe, like making the blind see again, things like that. I think that's believable. What I don't think is believable is, and it could be just scribes, the way they write, they shorthanded, like, because many copies of the Bible was written before we get to where we're at now. It's like, well, let's change some things. Or it's Jonah and the whale is a big one for me. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's, to me, when I read that, I'm like, that's baloney, right? So
no one says that Jonah was alive inside the whale.
Right, but that's just, to me, the way you see Baptists where we live, it's verbatim. The Bible is the key. It's the goal. It is what it is, right? This is what it is. It's written down, and this is it. And I think,
and just go ahead and keep going. I won't interrupt you, but go ahead.
Yeah,
I'll respond to that here in a minute.
Yeah, so it's just basically, I basically grew up as a Baptist, and I went to school, a Christian school.
Which one is that?
Yeah, sure. So I went to one that was in Hudson, Harris Chapel.
Okay.
Long time ago.
So you're talking elementary.
Oh, yeah. From elementary school early. Went to church with my grandmother, close to where your dad lives in there.
Okay.
And grew up really in a Christian household. But the biggest issue with me believing word for word what the Bible says, and you should take it and run with it, is, it's a lot of it's not believable in some sense. And that's hard for me. And it's not necessarily like I tell you all the time, I wish I had the faith Dustin has. Like, I wish I could be that way. It's just the way my brain's wired. I just can't be. And what made it even worse was going to college at Gardner-Webb. Like, believe it or not.
Now, that's actually not far from believable, actually.
Believe it or not, having to take the Bible and looking at it from a scholarly Bible point of view, it changed everything. Gotcha. A lot. Because when you start nitpicking, then you're like, well, the Hebrew Bible says this, but the King James says this. One word can mean a lot. Paul went north or Paul went northeast, right? Well, where did he go, So you start looking at small facts, and then you start learning, about Dead Sea Scrolls and stuff, and you're like, okay, well, I really don't have original copy of the Bible. Like, they're not an original copy. So it's basically copies of people that's put out over years, and it's been copied. And that's just was a really hard push for me.
And I think and growing up around here, I grew up with a very fundamental based Baptist background, and you have the people that will die on a hill for the King James Bible, and I don't think people understand, and maybe you don't either, how we get our Bible. So, for instance, the Quran. So, the Quran is written about 600 AD, somewhere around in there. You have the big revolution of the death of Muhammad. You know, he writes this book, and it's 600 years closer to the printing press. Not only that, you have not as great a length of it to go for an antiquity. So you'll have people who are Muslim, they'll say, oh, you know, we have, you know, some of our original text, because it's so much sooner. 600 years is a long time for parchment, skin, whichever they're going to write it on.
Hemp or cowhide.
Yeah, anything like that. Yeah. So, you know, they like to claim, well, you know, we only have this one, and that's the one that we go by.
Right.
Well, if someone takes that one copy and changes it, how do you know they changed it?
Sure. Well, multiple copies. I mean, the biggest issue in the academic, when I had to take my classes for an undergraduate degree, the biggest argument amongst scholars, we're talking PhDs, people that know Hebrew and travel to Israel all the time, you know, they really debate the letters of Paul more than anything. And that's more, I believe, New Testament.
It is New Testament.
Yeah. And, you know, in Dead Sea Scrolls, they find scrolls all the time. And in their field, they have to look and compare, okay, well, what do we have that's old? Oh, well, that validates it. We found something, you know, 1946, you know, oh, it validates it, right?
Yeah.
And that's how they get to what's written today. In the scholarly Bible versions, you know,
like the NASB, the newer versions, the ESV.
Yeah, they go through that. But it's just, you know, I just want to tell everybody now, that's just my opinions of it, and I don't want to push anybody to my opinion of anything, but I just want to share, you know, my philosophy of it. And,
okay. Well, I'm going to throw down some facts, because I actually studied this for the past 2 days in preparation for this.
I've not prepped at all, so just want to.
Oh no, that's fine. And I wanted to be a little bit prepared, because I knew some of the concerns that you had.
Sure.
And some of your more secular people who, or I won't say secular, the people who are non-believers that actually study ancient Greek, people who study ancient Greek that don't actually believe in the Bible. You know, there are people who do believe, and there are people who don't believe, that actually study the Bible for its validity. You know, making sure that this is the most accurate text that we have of this document. Because some people are just historians. Yeah. They just want the most accurate representation. So, and back to what I was saying earlier, you know, we have copies upon copies upon copies. As a matter of fact, a rough estimate, you know, it's give or take 100 or so, because as they examine these documents, they're kind of lining them up with the location. Possibly the same scribe wrote this same one, or they used the same text to copy from. But in what we have today, given with the Dead Sea Scrolls, which is a lot more evidence, there's a lot more copies, and older copies at that, than what they had when they wrote the King James Bible. But, you know, and people like to point out, there's 140-some thousand words in the New Testament. Do you want to know how many textual variants there are? And this sounds crazy. You don't. Well, you're looking at me like you don't know. 400,000 variants. Okay. And I say that out loud, and some people don't understand what a variant is. So a variant can be a spacing issue. It could be the scribe was looking back and forth on the text, and he jumped to the same word. A lot. I don't know if you've seen. Well, we see in English, you know, TIONINGES at the end of words. And it's even more similar if you've ever looked. And I actually have one sitting on the table over here, looking at an original Hebrew and original Greek translation. It's an interlinear Bible. James White would probably make fun of me for having that, but the point is that the symbols of the letters look really similar. And actually, what most people don't know is that when they wrote that text, there's no spaces. There's hardly no spaces, and there's hardly any punctuation, and no skipping on what we have today. Now, given all that, what we have today with the 400-some thousand odd variants, which can be, like I said, a letter, anything like that, over 5,800 manuscripts with 400,000 variants. When you look at those variants, there's only 1,500 that are non-punctuational or just little one letter or anything like that. So that roughs it down to about 99%. And of those 1,500 to 2,000, which is more like 1,700, are meaningful variants. Like most people don't know this, but in Mark 1:1, it doesn't say in the older text, the Son of God. It actually does not say that. And if you ever talk to a Muslim, that's usually the one they crutch on. They'll say, well, Mark actually doesn't say, the Son of God in 1:1. Okay, but does Mark call Jesus the Son of God in that text? Well, yes. Okay, well, that didn't change the meaning of the text. You may have a variant there. So it's more like 99.75% compliance over 1,500 years of hand copying. So 1,500 years before the printing press. So you have human error that's possible in there, and that's why we have so many variants. Over that span of time of 1,500 years, with only 1,500 to 2,000 meaningful variants like that would be considered a meaningful variant. You still have 99.75% accuracy over 1,500 years. Now, I believe what the text says, that he's preserved his word, which preserves the meaning of it, which makes me think, and here I am going into evidentialist, here I am giving you the evidence when I actually don't believe in that type of thing for an apologetic, but I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
If you question whether or not we have the original Bible, no, we don't, and that's actually a good thing. And the reason why I say that is if you had only one copy of the Bible, you better hope and pray that it's right.
Absolutely.
So the more you have, the better it is. And actually, the people who don't believe in the Bible say that the Bible that we have today, like the NASB, the ESV, and some of the quotations in the NIV, which I'm not the biggest fan of. I like more of a word-for-word translation. But they will tell you that there is no other text in the world that has the antiquity of the Bible. And what's
I mean the Bible is I'm just, excuse me, I've not looked this up, but I would say it's probably the most popular book
ever.
It is. Ever.
By hands down.
But I hear what you're saying. But the Old Testament really gets me, starting with creation. I believe it was 6 days the earth was created, on the seventh he rested.
Yes.
That's BS.
You think that's BS?
I think that's beyond BS.
Now, what evidence do you have for that?
Oh, absolutely. So basically, the creation story, I mean, that is it's humans explaining how we came to be. And there's no way humanly possible we even know the true answer of that today. Like, that's still the biggest mystery, is how everything was created.
Okay. And here's where we'll start having the fun now.
Yeah.
Okay, so you say there's no way to know possibly how the earth was created.
Well, I mean, we can guess. I mean, a rough guess, without looking at the Bible's text, a rough guess, looking at, because I have a science background. Okay. So everything I do.
I do too.
Yeah. But everything I do is, and how my mind's wired is I look for facts and I test those hypotheses, and then it's, repeated tests, and okay, that's what it is. But whether it's a star exploded and, things fell into place, or a supernova happened, something happened that created us. We're absolutely 100% something happened. But do I think one person just said, you know what, I'm going to make Mars and I'm going to make Earth? That's just extremely far-fetched for me. And that's why I have a lot of issues with the Old Testament, not necessarily the New Testament, because it's actually people's, life experiences. It would be equal to a blog. The New Testament I like to look at as a blog. It would be a blog in today.
Well, and I see where you're coming from, but I think you're taking it too of a literal point. What a lot of people don't understand about the Bible is that there's poem, there's meter, there's analogy, there's metaphor,
which is open to interpretation.
Open to interpretation, but there is one interpretation and many applications. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, you're talking about we can't know. There's no way possible that the earth could have been created in 6 days. And my question would be for someone who claims to be that there is a higher power.
Yeah.
Is it far-fetched to say that a higher power could not have done that?
I see where you're coming from, and I agree with you that it is not out of the realm of understanding that someone could have created it. But my thing is that to me, the Bible in that sense is a human trying to explain something from a long time ago. And you got to look at it that way. How would they explain stuff back in the day? And it's like, oh, well, God did it. And he did it in 7 days. That there's no way for you to know, that's truly what happened, and that's the issue I have with it. But, I mean, it's here nor there. I just think that, it's just extremely far-fetched for me to believe.
Okay. So I will take a step away from the text, and we can come back to that if you want to, because you don't fully believe the text, so it's not really going to do us any good to continue quite so much on that. But, you were talking about looking at things, testing things, watching things be repeated, and you were talking about the scientific method.
Yeah.
So in what worldview outside of Christianity gives you the reasoning or the ethical reasoning for being truthful or honest about your analysis of empirical data?
I mean, honestly, it's up to interpretation. So, for example, PhD people, they have codes of ethics, and, they're not going to lie or manipulate data to prove a point. They're going to look at it and say, okay, well, here is the Hebrew Bible that we've been using for thousands of copies for a long time, but here's the Dead Sea Scrolls we found in the 1940s. There are a couple words difference. That's a variant. As you explained to everybody, that's a variant.
Yeah. And actually, I would say that from a text critical analysis of the text, the older is probably more accurate than the newer.
Yeah.
I mean, you're closer to the original. Yeah. 1 and 2 words off over. Well, if you're thinking Old Testament, like with the Dead Sea Scrolls, which I want to say they had a book of Isaiah actually in one of those pots, and they actually, I don't know what kind of carbon date, I don't know if it's carbon-14, but they date that to about 400 years before the birth of Christ.
Yeah, and I just want to re-emphasize that they have to be something. They have to be a higher power. Why? Because of miracles, man.
Miracles.
I have seen things that I cannot explain. Give you a great example. My dad died. My dad was born on January 6th. Okay. I had a daughter about a year ago, and she was born on his birthday. But before that, I cried. Long time ago, I cried while my wife was pregnant, and I was like, I wish my dad was here to see it.
Yeah.
And they're just things you can't explain, like she was then born on his birthday. It's just things you can't explain that, to me, that is a form of a miracle. It's like you're giving me reassurance here.
1 out of 365, some people might not call that a miracle.
But to me, it is. So
to you, okay, so you're saying that experience, because you had a feeling or you had an experience, that is what determines what a miracle is.
Not necessarily, but the way I'm explaining it as an example is being born on your dad's birthday, or your child being born on his birthday, he's not around anymore, and you were weeping because you wished they were there. Someone answered that, or they did, or they wanted to show you or tell you, hey, it's okay, I'm still here. to me, that was the miracle. How I'm explaining.
So you sound like a Christian right now.
No.
So now you're talking about you had this experience.
Sure.
You're talking about something that's metaphysical. It's not something that you can lay hands on.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you do believe in a metaphysical aspect to our lives.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think anyone that don't think that, there's something wrong with them, because there are things that happen all the time to you that you can't explain, man.
Yeah. Well, outside of a Christian worldview, that, like, for instance, you have an issue with Old Testament, especially Jonah and the whale. In my worldview, that is strange.
It's extremely strange.
It's extremely strange. I mean, a donkey talked to a man. I believe a dead guy rose from the dead. In my worldview, that is strange. Now,
True.
if you don't have a Christian worldview, that's not strange at all, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Because I look at the world through the transcendental argument.
Okay, what's this?
The transcendental argument is God exists because if he didn't, nothing would exist. Nothing would exist. We wouldn't have ethics. We wouldn't have anything like that. And we wouldn't have love. We wouldn't have art. We wouldn't have laws of logic. We wouldn't have the scientific method. There would just be nothing. We wouldn't have words or language. So
that's an interesting way of seeing it, because I don't see it that way.
Yeah, and I understand you don't see it that way.
Yeah.
And I can argue for that. But what I really want to get down to is how do you account, or do you have moral absolutes? And if you do, can you explain why you have them?
Okay, explain what you're talking about when you say moral absolutes.
What I mean moral absolutes is like good and evil. So you have a little girl.
Mm-hmm.
I have one on the way.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually just did the ultrasound the other day. And everything looks good.
Good.
I'm excited and happy.
We're happy for you.
And thank you, brother.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I understand when I see her on that screen, and I know you see your baby girl, and when she smiles, you have this heart-melting feeling.
Absolutely.
And she melts your heart, and no one else does that. And can you explain why you feel that way? Why do you have such a love for your child? I want to hear your explanation.
Sure. I think, I was first and foremost raised by women mainly. So I have, as a male, I have a different way of looking at children where, a lot of times in our society, male figures are absent and, that's the woman's job, whatever. I'm more engaged than, I like to say 90% of males. I joke with my wife. But anyway, I look at it as, basically it's just an overwhelming sensation of love.
And that's it. Okay, you have love, but
Right.
I want to understand your worldview that accounts for it. Like,
I think it's a learned behavior, man.
A learned behavior?
Honestly, it's a learned behavior because,
Is love good or is it bad?
It can be both. It can be both.
It can be both. Love is good and bad.
Yeah.
I guess it depends on which kind, but what I'm ultimately trying to boil you down to, what is ethically good and morally bad? For instance, in a Christian worldview, I can honestly say that a woman who goes to an abortion mill and aborts her child,
that's not being responsible.
I would say it's murder, and that the woman should be held responsible. And I know you kind of feel the same way about that, but I have a moral and ethical argument for that, because God has said in his word that you are to preserve life, that you are to love your neighbors, you love yourself, and you're supposed to show respect, that he actually knits us in our mother's wombs, that we're fearfully and wonderfully created by him, and we're actually created in his image, and therefore we have an obligation as other image bearers to respect each other. So I have a moral stand ground in a Christian worldview. My question to you is, why should you have an ethical responsibility to anyone?
I think respect is a big one to me.
But how do you account for that?
There again, it's your ethics is your really a learned behavior, man.
It's a learned behavior.
If you ethics is learned behavior. If you're raised by, just an example, if you're raised by a used car salesman, this is just an example.
Okay.
And he rips people off all the time. you're going to think that's okay. Well, if you're raised in a house that's extremely loving, you're going to be loving. If you were raised in a house to where, they're responsible people, you're going to be responsible, and it's a learned behavior. So it's kind of hard to answer the question how you want me to answer it, because I find that 90% of everyone's actions can automatically go back to a learned behavior.
A learned behavior.
Yeah.
So if I learned from, well, let's just say I was born in the jungle of South America, where the cannibals actually still live.
Yeah, they're one island that's somewhere that you can't go because they throw spears and stuff at helicopters and stuff.
Yeah.
And they eat people.
Yeah, well, let's say that I lived there.
Okay.
And let's say
I wouldn't last long, but okay.
Well, that's because I'm white. And most of those people do not look like me.
Yeah.
I would be probably considered a demon and killed on the side. But no, let's say that I was born there, and that was, our tradition was to kill the firstborn of each family.
Okay.
Is that okay in that worldview? If that's what I was raised.
If that's where you were raised around, then yeah. If they thought, hey, the firstborn will turn into some kind of creature and you got to get rid of it, then yeah, I mean.
So is it ethical? And what I mean by ethical absolutes or moral absolutes, that's something that can be practiced everywhere and everyone agrees on it. So
I don't know.
So you say ethics is subjective.
Well, it's also, if somebody has a mental illness, they're not going to have any ethics. Period. They're not mentally able to have that concept. So,
why? Because that's what they believe, or that's how they're raised.
Yeah, I mean,
and that's who they are.
They're just not. Their brain's not able to function and to even go there, man.
Okay, well, let's put it like this. Let's say a guy down your street is raised to rape women.
That's horrible.
Okay. Yeah, okay. I can account for that, and I can say it's horrible. Yeah. But in his family, let's say it's
that's normalized.
Let's say he's from West Virginia. Let's just pick on West Virginia. Let's say that rape is propagated in the family, and it's okay to rape women whenever and however you want. Just because he's raised, does that make it ethically right?
Absolutely not, because of the morals regarding
so there's an absolute, I can absolutely say that rape is wrong.
It is wrong. Absolutely, 100%.
Why is it wrong?
Because it's wrong.
That begs the question. It's wrong because it's wrong is begging the question.
Well, it's wrong because women are their own body. They can choose to do what they want to do. 2, rape is illegal. 3, I don't know why anyone would feel the need to do that.
Well, some people feel the need to do that, and that's why they do it.
Right, and it's wrong.
Well, and I mean, just because the law says it's okay doesn't make it right.
Right.
For
it's
instance,
ethics, right.
For instance, if we were 300 years in the past, it would be ethically okay to own slaves.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not even going there.
Oh, okay, you're not going to go there. I want to go there.
I don't wanna go there.
Ethically, it was societal convention that said it was okay, but in God's word it says if you would take someone against their will and put them into slavery, that is punishable by death.
Yeah, well, I'm not.
So I have a moral and ethical ground to stand on to say if you go in and snatch someone in the middle of the night, take them from their family, that you deserve the death penalty.
Well, that's kidnapping. So
yeah, it is kidnapping.
Yeah,
and then it's put into slavery. I mean. What would you think with the young women, especially around the border of Texas, with the drug cartels? Those women are abducted and swept over into Mexico, and they become sex slaves.
Yeah, that's horrible.
Oh, yeah, I know it's horrible.
It's
but
horrible.
Can you tell me why? I can tell you why.
You talking about evil?
Yeah, evil. Yeah, what is there such a thing as evil? Because the way you put it earlier, you said if someone's raised a certain way and it's a tradition. Yeah. If it's a part of their tradition, there's no such thing as evil.
Because it's a learned behavior.
It's a learned behavior. Yeah. So if I learn to rape women from my family, does that make it okay?
It's not okay, man.
I know
it's not okay.
I know it's not okay, and I know it's not okay. And you know why it's not okay? It says God has written the law on our hearts. It's on our hearts. We know what's right and what's wrong, and yet we do it anyway.
I mean, evil.
Not right. So we're talking about other things. Talking about lying,
lying, stealing, whatever. But honestly, evil. Since you want to go with evil, you asked me, does evil exist? And the answer to that question is, I think yes. And the reason why I would say evil, people, you would put it as people sin, but I think evil can be different things. It can be people want something and they do stuff to people to get what they want. Evil can be many things.
Well, it says in the Bible that the encompass of the law is under these two commandments, that you should love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Mm-hmm. And the next one, like unto it, is you should love your neighbor as you love yourself. So if you're talking about being evil, being not telling someone the whole truth, or doing something conniving or manipulating, that's not loving your neighbor. I would call that sin and call it evil, which I am a product of. I still sin.
Well, everybody, if you view it from a Christian point of view, everyone sins. Well, but, I think one of the biggest issues with evil, you want to put it evil, is I think people just care about themselves.
Yeah.
And I think that's what drives what we want to call evil. It's just, it's self-centeredness, and it's people wanting for themselves and not, as you want to put it, love thy neighbor, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the problem.
If you're not loving your neighbor, you're sinning.
Right. But that goes back to the Bible, me viewing the Bible as a rule book. We've not hit that yet. But, I think whether it's Christianity, people that believed in serpent cults, whether you're Muslim, I think at the end of the day, in my point of view, is the Bible, as it sits, is a rule book. It's what you should do, how you should treat people. And Christianity, whether that be AD, BC, now, in a lot of ways, people used religion as social gatherings and also used it to control people. And that would go to slavery and different things.
Well, I mean, no one's arguing that that people have not used the veil of Christianity to mask
Catholic
evil.
Church.
Oh, I mean, yeah. I mean, the Catholic.
We don't want to say.
I don't want to go that deep on this podcast. We were already like 32 minutes in, but yeah, talking about the penance tax. You had the Catholic Church using the veil of Christianity or the veil of Catholicism, and saying we'll forgive your sins if you'll give us money.
Yeah.
Okay. Nowhere in the Bible does it say that people will stop sinning. I mean, it says to not sin, but at the same time, there's people who will say they're Christian and they're not.
Yeah.
There'll be people who will still do evil things in this world, and I know why they do it. Mm-hmm. I understand why they do it. They're lost, and they're undone, and they don't want God in their lives. The truth of God is being revealed to all ungodliness and unrighteousness. That's Romans 1, which Paul, which we hopefully will. You know what? This has already taken a while, and we're definitely going to have a part 2. Can we do a part 2?
Yeah, sure. We can record a part 2.
Yeah, well, let's keep going. But
sure. I definitely want to go over Pompeii and Moses parting the Red Sea.
Cool.
I definitely want to go over that.
Yeah.
Because that's some of the best evidence that we have, like physical evidence.
Yeah.
That supports actual events.
So, I mean, that's crazy that you have, like this,
my view is
this infatuation with Old Testament and the big stuff that God does in Old Testament, such as wiping people out and parting the Red Sea. Yeah. And like you're infatuated with that, but at the same time, you're still a skeptic.
Yep.
You are very perplexing.
Yep. And it's okay. And
that's okay. No. It's perplexing because you're so close. It's like the truth is right in front of your face, and it's so close that you can't see. It's like right between your eyes.
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
I mean, the honest truth is it's hard for a person like me. And the crazy thing is I was born, in a Baptist household by 2 women that would go to church on Sunday. And it's just, I have more questions than answers, and the more questions than answers causes problem. And it goes back to, faith. It's something I don't have. And that I envy you for is that I wish I had what you had with it. And I know that's part of sin, and you shouldn't envy other people and want what they have, but in the Christian point of view, but at the same time, I don't have that. And that's just something I wish I could work on, but it's extremely hard for me.
So what in the Old Testament, especially looking up Mount Sinai and this,
it's fantastic. It's fascinating.
Do you have confidence in that stuff is actually real?
Yeah, I mean
so you're confident. Is there enough evidence there to make you confident that actually is that place?
I would love to get permits and let's go.
Okay,
but the problem
we can't really travel right now.
Well, Saudi Arabia has blocked the whole mountain off. They literally have blocked the whole mountain off with fences, and it was a really good couple gentlemen. They were in their 40s. They had nothing to gain by it, and they said, "Hey, we want to trace the track of Moses," and they found a pretty good place where leaving Egypt, going straight into Saudi Arabia, and traveled the route. Hey, it talks about
this is talking about where they were wandering in the wilderness.
Yeah, where Bitter Springs. They found the Bitter Springs. Okay, well, there are Bitter Springs here. Well, they kept going. Oh, there's 12 natural springs. They found 12 natural springs. So which gives some credibility to that part that's written down, which I find interesting, and that's what I look for. Regardless of science, it's like, okay, that's accurate. But just because that part's true, I still ain't believing about Jonah and the well, okay? And I'm still not believing that, God snapped his fingers and then it's like 7 days later we have everything.
It doesn't say that he snapped his fingers.
Yeah, but that's my joke.
That's your joke.
That's my Avengers joke.
Well, and I think, too, coming from this area, you have a lot of people taking things very literally.
Sam Craven. Sorry to interrupt you. Sam Craven. Union Grove. Yeah, Union Grove Church. Sam Craven, Pastor Sam Craven, in my family, he's been a wonderful person, the most honest and humble person I've ever met in my life. Lives and dies hardcore Baptist by the Word of God. I think he's wrong, but at the same time, I have so much respect for him. He is such a good person. Just won't throw it out there.
Okay, well, good deal. But what I was getting at, and I lost my train of thought. Anyway, I can go back and review it later. But from hearing you talk about these evidences and stuff, if someone came out with evidence that the Bible was 100% true, you're still subjective to that person's opinion.
Yeah, I mean the Bible has to be read and interpreted the way you believe it, and I think that's the.
And see, I would disagree, and
okay.
and the reason why I would say that is if you start going about talking about let's get back to the rule book. Yeah. You're talking about it as a generalization.
Yeah.
If you leave things up to interpretation, you start getting people who manipulate the text.
Absolutely. Kind of like Muslims do sometimes.
Well, with Old Testament, more than likely. You have people who will manipulate a text because they say, this is how I interpret it, which we can go into hermeneutics if you want to. You have to look at the text as who wrote it, who's the audience,
right?
When was it written,
right?
And you have to think about current events and things that are going on at that time. And from that, you can interpret what is going on. So there is one interpretation, but a many application. For instance, we were talking about evil, and you were talking about people being self-centered. If you look at the garden, God creates heaven and earth, everything in it, space, planets, all the stuff that we see, man, and everything in 6 days, and then rests on the seventh. And you have good, the light's good, the water's good. He's man and makes it in his image good, and then he rests. The first time God says it is not good for a man to be alone, he makes him a helpmeet. But the very first question raised in the Bible it occurs in Genesis, and it's the serpent speaking to Eve, and he says, hath God said? it was the first question arose. Are you sure he said that?
I think garden was BS.
You think it's all BS?
No,
or you think a very good fair bit of it is BS?
I think a lot of the Old Testament, man, is BS, dude. It's just it's too far out there, and it's too far out there in the sense that here's a great example. All right.
Well, let me finish my example.
Okay.
But you were talking about people being self-centered and evil.
Absolutely.
You have the question presented to Eve in the form of
take a bite of the apple.
Yeah, well, not take a bite of the apple. We don't know whether it was apple, a pear, or peach fruit. And see, there's another generalization. You're talking about. I don't believe that it can be created in 6 days.
I don't.
If there is a God out there, and He is powerful enough to create things, what keeps Him from doing it in 6 days?
There would be nothing.
So it's not outside the realm of possibility.
Absolutely. If that is factual and you believe that.
How do you interpret facts?
Sure. So facts is, here's a great example. Well, court systems, they want original copies of everything. If you don't have an original copy and you have a copy, then it's no good. And so you have to look at the same logic that, the whole Bible's based on copy after copy after copy. Revisions, variants, copy. That's fine.
But that still doesn't explain what a fact is, though.
Right. But where I'm getting to with fact is can you back that up with testimony, which the Bible does present a lot of it, especially in the New Testament.
Which is how we get our law.
Right.
The founding fathers actually built our law system based off of the Bible.
Right. And then you look at fact also is based on physical evidence.
Physical evidence, that you can see and analyze.
Absolutely.
My question is, if you take that as a fact, for instance, if the water you're drinking right now, if it's actual water, how do you know it's water?
Because I can see it.
You can see it.
Yeah.
How do you know your senses are valid?
Because I have taste, and it tastes like good water.
It tastes like good water. But that's begging the question. Just because you taste it doesn't mean it's valid. For instance, if we had someone in here who's a schizophrenic, or someone who's done massive amounts of LSD, and he looks at the walls and said, "Oh my gosh, the spiders are everywhere. The spiders are on the wall."
It doesn't mean he's not seen the spiders.
Are the spiders real?
To him, it is.
Does that make them real?
To him, it does.
So truth is subjective to the person.
Absolutely, and that's
so. If I believe it's true,
then it's true for you. Yeah, but for me, it's not.
So if I say I'm a woman, does that make it true?
In today's culture, it could be.
But does that make it true?
Well, I know different, so no.
You know different.
Yeah,
that's begging the question.
Yeah, I know your mom and dad.
I know you know my mom and dad, but I'm talking about me. I'm saying let's say I'm not a Christian. Let's say I am being a part of the world per se. I say as my truth. Your truth's your truth. My truth's my truth.
Just like your mental perspective, I'm a woman, like kind of.
Yeah.
Okay.
No. I'm a woman, just straight up general.
Okay.
I say I'm a woman.
Yeah, I find that BS, but
why do you find that? But that's my truth.
Yeah, well, that might be your truth, but
does that make it right?
Well, biology tells me that you're a man.
Whoa. Where did you get biology from?
Yeah, well, that's just science, dude. It's either you are X or
science.
Y. You're not both. Well, you could be, but it's extremely rare.
But how do you account for science outside of a Christian worldview? Because to actually take in data to say the future will be like the past, you have to have faith that the future will be like the past. If you claim not to be a man of faith, how can you be confident in the future? Well,
yeah, sure. So faith, to me, it's scared, man. It's like I have faith in nobody.
You're not supposed to put your faith in man anyway.
Absolutely not. But either.
But we're talking about science. We're talking about science. So laws of gravity.
Sure.
Okay, so when you wake
Sir
up
Isaac Newton, my man.
So when I want to say Sir Isaac Newton was a Christian.
He might have been.
I'm not sure. I will have to look that up later.
Don't matter. When that apple hit his head, he's like, "Yep, gravity."
Gravity. But to not beg the question,
sure.
When we're looking at data, when we do the scientific method,
you have to have ethics when you look at any of that.
So what's to say if it's my truth that I'm a woman, and my truth affects my data, and I come out with this big long paper.
That happens a lot.
Is that right?
No, that's not ethical at all.
So it's not true.
It wouldn't be. It doesn't mean it's not true to you, but it's still not ethical. A great example is people voting. People voted for whoever they want, and that's their belief. But at the end of the day, if data doesn't support something, then it doesn't support it. But if you're manipulating data, which is called data manipulation, and you're saying, okay, because I view just example that, hey, this person's a woman, they don't have the same rights or this or that, that's using gender to basically discriminate against somebody for one, but two, you're manipulating what the truth really is. And it happens a lot.
So you're saying still that truth is subjective.
Absolutely.
So
it really is subjective, man.
It is subjective. So if I go into court, can I tell my truth and it not be your truth?
They don't care.
Well, let's just say it's between friends then.
Okay.
Let's say you come up to me and I steal your wallet.
Okay.
And you ask me,
ain't much in there, but
and you say, "Hey, give me my wallet back." And I'm like, "Well, it's my wallet." And you're like, "Well, that's not true." Well, it's my truth.
Your truth is that's your wallet.
Yeah. Does it make it my wallet?
It does not make it your wallet.
Why?
But because it was the other person's wallet.
Now, how do you know that?
Because my credit card's in it.
My credit card's in it? Well, that's my name. So, you see what I'm getting at?
I get what you're saying.
Truth cannot be subjective, because if truth is subjective, then there is no such thing as truth, because what's true now isn't true in the future.
Yeah, but man, that still can be viewed as subjective. The truth can be subjective.
But if you reduce the truth to subjectiveness,
the government does it all the time.
Well, I'm not talking about the government. The government's crooked and corrupt anyway.
Agreed.
And that's where we can come in on common ground, son. But what I'm saying is, if you constantly shift the truth, if the truth is subjective,
you're never going to get data good enough to provide what is truth or false.
Yeah. Well, if you say something is true and something is false, and I say the exact opposite, which one of us is right?
Well, you're both going to butt heads like Democrats and Republicans, because one's right, I'm right. No, I'm right. So
okay. Well, how do you know who's right? For instance,
you're going to back that up by data.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's go back to abortion. We'll go back to abortion. Let's say you're legislating for women's rights.
Okay.
Let's say you're pro-abortion and I'm anti-abortion. Let's say I'm pro-life.
Sure. Which is hypothetical.
It's hypothetical.
Yeah, because I don't believe in that. So
okay,
right, go ahead. I just want to say that for the record.
Okay. Well, and we know you're conservative. You're conservative Christian skeptic, and I apologize. I need to turn my phone off.
We were talking about abortion.
Okay. Yeah. So you, for the record, we know you're not, and we know you're not pro-choice. You are pro-life, and I am pro-life as well. I have a worldview that supports that. I don't think you do, but that's another story for another day. But what I'm getting at is, I say that it's a life. You say that it's not. Okay. How do we know?
Coming from the perspective of someone that says that birth is not life or whatever.
Let's just say that it's not a human being.
Yeah, that's not right. But okay.
Okay. Well, let's look at it. Well, let's say we're both pro-life and we're looking at someone else, and
we're judging.
I'll play devil's advocate.
And we're judging other people.
We're not judging other people. We're measuring. We're measuring what is sin.
Okay.
Okay. For instance, and I hate when people do this. They say, "Don't judge me. You're not supposed to judge me." And I would say, listen.
Everybody does.
I'm not judging you. I'm judging your sin. I'm calling it wrong right now. That doesn't mean I don't love you, and I'm not respecting you. For instance, someone who is at an abortion mill and they're out there with their pro-choice signs, I can go up to them and honestly say, what you're doing is wrong. And the reason why I know that it's wrong is because God has said. So I can look at the person who is pro-choice, and I can tell them that they're wrong in their thinking, because God says that if you murder someone, that's wrong. And here's a very good evidence-based case for pro-life. What defines you as a human being? Like, what defines you as you are? How tall you are? Your eye color?
It's genetics, man.
It's genetics. Okay. So there's so many chromosomes that make you up as a human being.
Right.
When do those chromosomes come together?
They start right at conception.
Okay. Yeah. So at conception, you're a human being.
In my opinion, yes.
Yeah. So the Bible says that he knits us together in our mother's womb. Mm-hmm. And we have science that actually backs that up.
I would say that's accurate.
Yeah. So we can come together and say that that's wrong, but the person who believes in it and says that that's their truth, we can tell them that they're wrong, and I can show them they're wrong. Not only from an evidential standpoint, but from God's word, I can tell them. And that's how we get ethics. You actually cannot do it. There's no way to do it. Without the Bible, there's no way to have ethics. There's no laws of logic. There's no morality. You have none of that stuff.
Well, that's why I say the Bible is more of a rule book, man.
And that's where you go into fallacy, because if you say it's just a rule book, that rule book can be interpreted and manipulated.
And that's what our laws have done.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean that's proof of it. I mean,
so if you stay to the word as the word is written, you can be consistent, and that's what science is all about. You want to be consistent. You want your stuff to come back the same each and every time.
True, because where you can do the same tests over and over
and repeat it.
Yeah,
and the scientific method is based off of that. So, from someone who is trying to tell you that there's only one religion that's got it right, and I can honestly say that because nothing else stands up the way that this does. Yeah. There's no transcendental argument for anything else other than the Christian God. And that's the only one that I would ever agree to argue for. But I think we have went a long time.
Yeah, man.
We went 52 minutes, and we've got so much more to talk about. I think
we'll do a part 2.
So what do you think so far? Fun?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, the honest truth is, I love seeing your opinion on it, because my opinion, is I have a really hard time with the Old Testament, like extremely hard time. But we ain't even got into evolution yet, and how you could believe the Bible but also believe in evolution.
You can't.
You can, man.
Why?
Absolutely. Part 2, we'll go through it.
All right, part 2, we're going to talk about evolution and Christian evolution.
Yes.
Stick around. It's going to be fun. Listen, we love you guys. Thanks for sticking to the end. And Cliff, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, no problem.
And doing this with me.
Sure.
I think we've got a good title for the next episode.
Sure. Cool.
Listen, thank y'all. Have a blessed day. Thank you, Clifton. See you soon.